Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Danbury. From the fragmented world of our everyday lives, we gather together in search of wholeness. My name is Diane Harrington Purvis, and I'm a member of this congregation and a long-time Unitarian Universalist. And I truly do come closer to finding a sense of wholeness in this beloved community, especially when we get to sing. I'm so glad that you're able to join us this morning, both online and here in person. Our weekly services are more than just a gathering of our physical bodies. Each Sunday, we form a sacred time together, just as our congregations have been doing in Danbury for 199 years. As we work to build a more just world, and in that sense of sacredness, along with deep respect, we acknowledge that our physical building is on the traditional land of the Paugussett people. If you're new and joining us online, we invite you to introduce yourself and where you are connecting from in the chat box as you are comfortable. If you are new here in person, please fill out a guest card available in the foyer and drop it in the basket there on your way out. After our service, we invited those of you who are in person to stay inside and take a moment to greet those here today. Those of you at home can participate in a breakout room for individual connections and deeper check-ins. As a member of the Board of Trustees, I will be available in the main breakout room to answer any questions you may have for the board. We welcome you, whatever the faith and traditions of your past, whatever your theological stance, whatever your heritage, whoever you are and whomever you love, we welcome you. You can learn more about our congregation on our website and Facebook page, and we encourage you to share our Facebook page and reach out to others who may feel isolated and might benefit from the spiritual connection with our loving community. A few announcements. Join us today at 3:00 p.m. for our holiday concert. It's going to be fabulous. In person, you can join us here in the fellowship hall and watch it on the large screen, or you can watch it on the Zoom link, which will be sent later today. Last call for the holiday brown bag lunch with Reverend Kathleen, Wednesday, December 22nd, from noon to 1:30 p.m. Space is limited, and masks will be required, except when you're eating. Please email Reverend Kathleen at minister@uudanbury.org to reserve your spot. And it's here that we're meeting, right? And please, please, please come to our Christmas Eve service at 5:00 in person and online. There will be, just a teaser, there will be some live singing. The sign-up link will be sent tomorrow if you plan to attend in person. And finally, calling all poets for January 2nd, 2022, first Sunday of the new year. We are looking for UUCD poets who have written about beginnings or beginning again. Please send your poem immediately to Reverend Kathleen to be considered for inclusion in the service. Poets of all ages are encouraged to submit their work. Again, welcome to the UU Congregation of Danbury, where we welcome all in a spirit of compassion, inquiry, and service. Let us now enter a spirit of worship. Please join us for our hymn of welcome, Deck the Halls with Boughs of Holly. If you need the hymnal, it's number 235.
Deck the halls with boughs of holly. Tis the season to be jolly. La 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 la. Don we now our gay apparel. La 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 la. Oh, the ancient Yuletide carol. La 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 la. See the blazing Yule before us. La 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 la. Strike joyous all together. La 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 la. Heedless of the wind and weather. La 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 la.
We come together today in anticipation and imperfection. Some of us are bringing our best selves to this space, and some of us are bringing our struggling selves. Struggling with fear, regret, anxiety, uncertainty. But all of us are welcome here, and all of us are loved. Some of us already have wide open hearts, and some of us just aren't quite there yet because our hearts have gotten a little beat up this week or this month or perhaps this year. And we might have forgotten how to trust and fully open. All hearts are welcome here, no matter how bruised. All of us are imperfect, but here in this moment, right here, today, here we can drop our defenses and trust that what happens here is powerful. What happens here in this moment is life-giving. And together, we affirm that this day and our being together can make each of us braver, more compassionate, and wiser than when we woke up this morning. It is good to be together. I invite our service coordinator, Nancy Hershatter, to come and light our chalice while together we offer the words of affirmation. Love is the spirit of this congregation, and justice is its light. This is our covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek and speak the truth in love, to help one another and celebrate life.
Right on cue, my printer stopped working this morning, as if imperfection was the right word for it. I know that there are some kids who are remote today, so those of you who are at home, I invite you to come on over to the screen where you can be with us for the children's affirmation and our story. The words of affirmation are on the screen. Let's say them together. We are Unitarian Universalists. We are people with open minds, loving hearts, helping hands. We care for the earth and each other. The story I have for you this morning is a fable called The Cracked Pot. If you look for this story on Google, you will find many versions of it and many illustrations like this one here. I particularly liked this one, but I don't know who the artist is. So if you are a kid who likes to research things, maybe you could help me find the origin of this illustration and its artist. Also, I'm not really sure about the origin of this story. Some people say that it is an Indian folktale. Some people say that it is a Chinese folktale, but I'm not sure that it's either. So any help that any researching kids can give me in finding the origins of the story, I would also appreciate that. Here is one version of the story. A water bearer had 2 large pots, which she hung on the ends of a pole, which she carried across her neck. One of the pots had a crack in it, and while the other pot was perfect and always delivered a full portion of water at the end of the long walk home from the stream, the cracked pot only arrived half full. For 2 years, this went on daily. with the bearer delivering only 1.5 pots of water. Of course, the perfect pot was proud of its accomplishments, perfect to the end for which it was made. But the poor cracked pot was ashamed of its own imperfection and miserable that it was only able to accomplish half of what it had been made to do. After 2 years of what it perceived to be a bitter failure, it spoke to the water bearer one day by the stream. I'm ashamed of myself, and I want to apologize to you. The bearer asked, why? What are you ashamed of? The pot replied, for the past 2 years, I've only been able to deliver half of my load because this crack on my side causes water to leak out. Because of my flaws, you don't get full value for your efforts. The water bearer gently lifted the pot, admiring its beauty. She told the pot, when we next return from the stream, look up and to the side of you. For too long, it would seem you have been looking down, thinking only of how you compare to others, and not noticing how you have brought untold beauty into the world. When they next traveled the path, the old cracked pot took notice of the sun warming the beautiful wildflowers on the side of the path. And this cheered the pot up a little. But at the end of the trail, it still felt badly because it was, of course, half empty. So again, the pot apologized to the bearer. I'm sorry I keep failing you, the bearer said. The pot said to the bearer. And then the bearer said, did you notice that there were flowers only on your side of the path, but not on the other side? That's because I have always known about your crack, and I planted flower seeds on your side of the path so that every day while we walk back from the stream, you water them. For 2 years, I have been able to deliver water and flowers. Without you being just the way you are, there would be no flowers. Now the cracked pot understood, and so ends the story. I invite the kids to head downstairs as we sing This Little Light of Mine, and those of you who are remote to log into our group remotely.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
I'm not sure. We're going to enter into a time of our milestones. The time when we come together and we bring our whole selves, we bring our imperfections, because all of us is welcome here. And as we do that online, I encourage you to consider the milestones in your life, if there is something that you would share with this community. And if so, if you would type that in the chat box. And let's leave the chat box just for those milestones at this time. And here, in person, consider what is on your heart, what milestones you have in your life. Is there something you would bring to share with this community? Nancy will invite you, if you raise your hand, to come forward
to stand at the mic with a mask on. This is our community mic with many voices, so we keep masks on here. If you would do that, share your name and briefly share your milestone. And then Nancy will go back and forth between the chat box and what is here so that the entire community is heard and held with this morning's milestones. So I invite you now to type in the chat box your milestone or to raise your hand if you would like to come to the mic and share with the community. Breathe with me. Just breathe. We are here in this imperfect place, and yet how perfect it is to be together. Let us hold those milestones that were shared through the chat, the milestones shared here in person. I'm going to strike the singing bowl. I'm going to light one candle for all of the milestones not shared, but we're holding them in our hearts. As I strike the singing bowl, let yourself move to a place of prayer, of meditation, of contemplation, just of quiet. And after a few moments of holding these milestones in this community, I will strike the singing bowl again, and we will come out singing Spirit of Life. Join me.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea. Move in the air, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
The reading this morning is The Cup of Our Life by Joyce Rupp. It is time for me to see the flaws of myself and stop being alarmed. It's time for me to halt my drive for perfection and to accept my blemishes. It's time for me to receive ever slowly evolving growth, the kind that comes in its own good time and pays no heed to my panicky pushing. It's time for me to embrace my humanness, to love my incompleteness. It's time for me to cherish the unwanted, to welcome the unknown, to treasure the unfulfilled. Because if I wait to be perfect before I love myself, I will always be unsatisfied and ungrateful. And if I wait until all the flaws and chips and cracks disappear, I will be the cup that stands on the shelf and is never used. This ends the reading.
It is now time for our congregational offering. If you're visiting or with us for the first time, your presence here is your gift to us. Members and friends, please express your generosity by using the link or the QR code that's posted in the chat or projected on the screen. You may also mail a check to 24 Clapham Ridge Road in Danbury, 06811. Those of us here at UCD this morning, please make your contribution in the foyer at the conclusion of this morning's service. And thank you for doing your part to support and sustain this community that we love. Please join me in the words of our congregational offering. In the spirit of compassion and service, we dedicate these, our offerings.
Ave Maria, gratia plena, Maria, gratia plena, Maria, gratia plena, Ave, Ave Dominus, Dominus tecum, benedicta tui mulieribus, et benedictus fructus ventris, ventris tui, Iesus. Ave Maria.
Thank you, Jerry. I love the story that Sierra Marie told a little earlier. Every time I hear that story, I think of the Leonard Cohen lyrics. I'm sure you know them. Ring the bells that can still ring. Forget your perfect offering. There's a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. But I'm also reminded of another story. It was in the year 1963. So for any children or young people watching, ages ago. In the year 1963, on a beautiful September morning, there was a perfect baby born. Well, so said the parents and the grandparents and the aunties and so on. And they called the baby Angel. Because after all, this baby was as perfect as any heavenly being. The perfect baby grew up into the perfect little girl, attending the perfect elementary school, living in the perfect suburban neighborhood, and attending a perfect church. In fact, the perfect little girl was saved at the ripe old age of 8, guaranteeing a perfect afterlife. Angel was the perfect playmate and student until she made a C in penmanship. She was reprimanded because C is average, and she was not average. She began to feel the shame of imperfection. Most of us have been there, haven't we? I was delighted several years ago when I happened upon a book called The Spirituality of Imperfection. I know some of you, I see heads shaking, some of you have heard of that. The spirituality of imperfection, concerned with the basic and inherent flaws of being human. The spirituality of imperfection speaks to those who, and I will quote, seek meaning in the absurd, seek peace within chaos, seek light within darkness and joy within the suffering, without denying reality and even the necessity of absurdity and chaos and darkness and perhaps some suffering. It's not a spirituality for saints. The book makes that very clear. It's for people who feel at times divided and fractured and pulled in a dozen directions, just yearning for serenity. And let's face it, the closest to perfection that anyone comes is when they fill out a job application or they write a resume. But I want to tell you that imperfection does not mean we toss everything in the dumpster either. Consider a bruised piece of fruit. It still has plenty of sweetness to salvage and to savor. And I'm reminded of the various knitting ministries that I have belonged to in Unitarian Universalist congregations, my very first being this congregation. I'm reminded because members of those groups will tell you that an imperfection like dropping a stitch or two or three can be salvaged. It can be salvaged by the loving hands of a more experienced knitter, or perhaps the whole is left as is. After all, think for just a moment of all the masterpieces of art that are reconstructed and recreated with careful detail to include the imperfections that were found in the original work. Now, I have never been, I will admit, a huge sports fan. I can't say I know a lot about all the rules and regulations, but I find it absolutely fascinating, and sports fans will correct me if I'm wrong, but I think baseball, alone in all the sports, actually considers errors to be a part of the game. Am I right? Is there another sport that actually sees errors as part of the game? It's part of baseball's rigorous truth. You remember last week I spoke about seeking and searching for your truth. Baseball, one commissioner said, teaches that errors are part of the game and perfection is an impossible goal. Well, errors are a part of our truth. They're part of our truth as human beings, and to deny your errors is to deny yourself. For to be human is to be imperfect. To be human is to ask those unanswerable questions. And I had a conversation this week with someone asking the big why questions. And we decided together we may never have the answer, but we continue to ask. To be human is to continue to ask, to persist. To be human is to hurt, but to try to find a way to healing through the hurt. Imperfection in ourselves, in others, in the world provides us with a gift, because it provides us with opportunities to create compassionate outreach, the opportunity to learn valuable life lessons, and the opportunity to begin healing ourselves and healing the world. Now, that perfect little girl grew up in her perfect home, attending her perfect schools and church, and she became obsessed with attaining perfection and pleasing others. Then she went off to the perfect university and all hell broke loose. Her ideas of perfection were challenged. She went from dropping out of college to failed marriage to estrangement from her family. Hers is a story of errors, but it's also a story of hope because it's based on a key concept. Simply receive people, situations, circumstances, and events as they occur, as they are, not as you wish they were. Now, this doesn't mean that we don't all have areas in our lives that cry out for improvement. It doesn't mean we sit back and we do nothing when our community is crumbling, when injustice is raging and there's work to be done. But if we choose to see the reality of imperfection as a gift of opportunity, then we're motivated to join trust and hope as forces that can create change, not create perfection. I want to make sure you heard that. To create change. As Unitarian Universalists, I think you would agree, our first response to brokenness is to fix it. We're people that believe in solutions, but not everything that is broken can be fixed. Humans are fragile. Life is hard. The world has probably always been broken, and we humans have always sought ways to fix that brokenness. Our response is to tell stories of original, perfect, mythical worlds where all is good and pure and hopeful. One of the great myths, that of Adam and Eve in paradise. Remember this beautiful, happy couple, safe and whole until the snake arrives. Indigenous creation stories often portray a perfect world before some animal trickster like coyote or raven comes along to complicate things. But of course, that's always what happens. Paradise is never reality. Chipped and frayed, seams ripped apart and re-sewn, torn and battered by life, imperfection is part of the human condition. Now, when I first joined a Unitarian Universalist congregation, and as just about everybody knows, it was this congregation in a former iteration, the minister, Reverend Daniel O'Connell, handed me a book, and the title alone got me. A Chosen Faith. I could choose. A chosen faith. And one of the book's authors took those biblical beatitudes that we find in the Christian scriptures and gave them some new meanings based on the idea that we all have expectations. And sometimes those expectations are of perfection. Expectations that are conditioned by our background, our experience, our doubts, and our faith. The ones that touched me most deeply. Blessed are those who can renounce smugness and be shaken in conscience. Blessed are those who know that the church is often imperfect, even inadequate, and yet do not harbor feelings of anger or personal disappointment. Blessed are those who keep in mind their sense of humor. Blessed are they indeed. Needless to say, because you surely already know, ministers and religious leaders are imperfect. In fact, having recently graduated from seminary, a minister was at his very first preaching gig as a newly ordained minister, so he could wear the stole. But he was so nervous he could hardly speak. So after the services, he asked a colleague for some advice. And she replied, when I'm worried about getting nervous in the pulpit, I put a little glass of vodka next to the water glass. It looks the same. No one will know. And then if I start to feel nervous, I take just a little sip. And don't worry, I'm going to be there to give you feedback. So the next Sunday, the minister took the colleague's advice. At the beginning of the service, he got really nervous, and so he took a little drink. He proceeded to talk up a storm. Upon return to his office the next day, he found an email from his helpful colleague. Sip the vodka, don't gulp. There are 10 commandments, not 12. There are 12 disciples, not 10. Jesus was consecrated and not constipated. Jacob wagered his donkey, he did not bet his ass. David slew Goliath, he did not kick the crap out of him. And the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost are not to be referred to as Daddy, Junior, and the little spooky thing. Finally, my dear colleague, the recommended grace before a meal is not rub-a-dub-dub, thanks for the grub, yay God. Blessed are those who keep in mind their sense of humor. Errors, an essential part of the game. That perfect little girl, rarely called Angel anymore. She's grown with a grandchild and called now by her given name, Kathleen. After experiencing deep grief and loss, I am now a newlywed, happily married to a wonderfully imperfect man. I enjoy my beautiful and talented imperfect children and grandchild. I cherish this incredible, intelligent, and imperfect religious tradition called Unitarian Universalism. And I am blessed. I'm blessed to share and to witness joys, sorrows, frustrations, and rewarding experiences in this terrifically imperfect congregation. You can be assured that while I will never be the perfect minister, in fact, I've told a few of you, I will disappoint you. But you can count on me to do my best. You can count on me to accept my imperfections and embrace opportunities for reflection and growth that those imperfections present. And while I do not expect perfection from you, I come trusting your best. Even when you are struggling, even when you feel like your heart has been beaten up. What Unitarian Universalism has to offer, what this congregation has to offer, is neither the ability to become flawless nor the ability to cure others of their flaws. It's not going to happen. What we have instead, at least in our best moments, is the capacity to appreciate that field of flowers that all of us cracked pots have created. Spirituality is nurtured in community. The oneness with others that springs from shared vision and goal and shared memory and shared hope. Because what we discover in solitude is often only best fulfilled in community. And that doesn't matter whether it's in person or online. We can connect in community either way as we are willing. We are a loving, imperfect people. And we have a choice, my friends. We have a choice to live our call to compassionate outreach, to learning from one another, to doing our part to heal the world, or we can take our focus off of that call and become mired in the concealment of imperfections, fixated on the imperfection of others. And I can promise you this, If we wait until all the flaws and chips and cracks disappear from ourselves, from each other, from this community, we will be that cup. That cup that stands on the shelf and is never used. A gift never opened. And that is a luxury we cannot afford, because the world needs us. The world needs our dedication, our joy, our hope, our anger, our compassion. The world needs our rigorous truth that we are all imperfect, but all welcome, all loved. You, and your imperfections, well, you are a gift, and may it be so.
Please join me in the words for extinguishing our chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire.
Let's sing our closing hymn, Come Sing a Song With Me, 346.
Let's rise in body or spirit.
Come sing a song with me. Come sing a song with me. Come sing a song with me. I might know and I'll bring you home when home is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love in the winter time. Come dream a dream with me. Come dream a dream with me. Come dream a dream that I might know you. And I'll bring you home when home is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love in the winter time. Come walk in rain with me. Come walk in rain with me. Come walk in rain with me. That I might know your mind. And I'll bring you home when home is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love in the winter time. Come share a rose with me. Come share a rose with me. Come share a rose with me. That I might know you. And I'll bring you home when home is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love in the winter time.
May the love which overcomes all differences, which heals all wounds, which puts to flight all fears, which reconciles all who are separated and accepts our imperfections, be in us, be with us, among us now and always. Shalom. Salam. Amen. Blessed be to each and to all. Namaste.